The discovery happened on a Tuesday, but no one on Earth would know about it for 3 more months. Dr. Marcus Chin stood at the observation window of the research ship Pathfinder. His breath fogged up the reinforced glass as he looked at what they had found. There was a lot of quiet activity going on behind him on the command deck. Scientists were talking into headsets, holographic displays were flashing with data streams, and the soft hum of life support systems kept their bubble of civilization alive in the void. "It's beautiful," Lieutenant Sarah Park, the ship's chief navigator, whispered as she came up to the window next to him. Marcus nodded but couldn't say anything. It wasn't quite beautiful. The artifact looked like a piece of frozen music on the surface of Kepler 442b. It was a structure with impossible geometry that seemed to change shape when you looked at it from different angles. It was about the same size as a city bus and was made of a material that made physicists cry when they saw how it reflected light. It sometimes looked like smooth obsidian, like liquid mercury at times, sometimes like starlight that has been caught. They called it the Archon fragment because it was the first word in a dozen Earth languages that meant beginning. It seemed right for something that came before anything else humans had ever seen. "Dr. Chin," Commander Robert Hayes yelled from the tactical station. "The Cthar group just got here. They want to know if they can start their analysis." Marcus turned away from the window, feeling a familiar tightness in his chest. The Cthar were the third alien race to try to get the fragment. The Solarian Federation was the first to try, and they spent 6 weeks bathing the artifact in every type of radiation known to science. Nothing. Then the Viridian Collective showed up with quantum probes that could map the structures of subatomic particles. Nothing else either. The Cthar had come with enough gear to fill a small warehouse, and they were known for solving problems that seemed impossible. "Let them in," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice from sounding tired. "Work with Dr. Okonkwo to make sure they have everything they need." It was cool to see the Cthar. They moved with careful precision, and their insect-like bodies were covered in environmental suits that looked more like works of art than protective gear. Their main scientist, whose name roughly meant storm over still water, used a translation device to turn their clicking and whistling language into clear English. "We appreciate the cooperation of all humans," Storm said, their mandibles moving under the clear faceplate of their helmet. "Our probability matrices say that there is a 73% chance that activation will work within the next rotation of the planet." Marcus had learned not to get his hopes up. The Solarians and the Viridians had also said things that made him feel good, that he had to admit that the Ctharis way of doing things was interesting. They didn't just scan the fragment. They also put a lattice of energy emitters around it to make a kind of sympathetic resonance field. The idea was that the artifact might react to its own energy signature, like how you can get a shy animal to come out of its shell by using its own scent. Marcus watched the Cthar work for 3 days. They were smart, organized, and thorough. They tried every possible frequency-energy combination and theoretical approach that their huge networks of computers could come up with. The fragment was in the middle of their web of technology, and it didn't move or make any noise. On the 4th day, Storm went up to Marcus in the observation bay. The Cthar scientist's body language showed that he had lost. His antennae were drooping and his body segments were slightly compressed. "We have to admit that we failed," Storm said simply. "The artifact doesn't react to any of the stimuli we give it. Its molecular structure stays the same no matter what test parameters are used. Seems like..." Storm stopped and looked for words. "Like it isn't really here. Like we're seeing an echo instead of the thing itself." Marcus's heart sank. "So what's next?" "We're leaving. We need our resources elsewhere, and we can't justify spending more money on something that seems to be a useless curiosity." The translator for Storm made their words sound formal and almost sorry. "We're sorry, Dr. Chin. Maybe it's just a monument. A grave marker for a civilization that has been gone for a long time." The Pathfinder felt emptier than usual after the Cthar left. Marcus spent more time at the observation window, staring at the fragment as if he could make it respond just by wanting it to. Dr. Jennifer Okonkwo, the mission's chief xenoarchaeologist, said, "You're brooding again." She was a tall woman with dark skin and bright, curious eyes that seemed to see everything. "I'm thinking," Marcus said. "That's just thinking about it with a thesaurus." Jennifer came to the window with 2 coffee bulbs in her hands. She gave him one. "The brass is talking about putting it all away, you know? Taking the whole thing to a research station for a long time to study it. They want to put it in a museum," Marcus said without emotion. "Yes, basically." Jennifer took a sip of her coffee and made a face at the taste. "Man, I miss real coffee. The replicated stuff never gets the bitterness right." She was quiet for a moment before adding, "There's one more person who wants to see it." Marcus looked at her. "Who?" Dr. Anya Sharma. She works for the Soul System Historical Engineering Division. It looks like she's become well known for old technology, mostly things that humans made before they met aliens, but also some early alien artifacts. She uses unusual methods. How out of the ordinary. Jennifer smiled. Some people have called her part engineer, part archaeologist, and part mystic. The scientific community thinks she's a little crazy, but she gets things done. She asked for a ride to our place. Marcus thought about this. What did they have to lose? Tell her to come. But she only gets 2 days at the most. After that, we are following orders and moving the fragment. Send the message, Jennifer said. She stopped at the door and looked back. Marcus? We might have been thinking about this the wrong way. It might not respond to what we know. It might react to what we've forgotten. 3 days later, Dr. Anya Sharma came on a small transport ship. She didn't look at all like Marcus had expected. She was in her mid-30s, had warm brown skin, dark hair pulled back in a useful braid, and eyes that seemed to look through things instead of at them. She wore simple work clothes like cargo pants, a fitted jacket, and sturdy boots. She also had a single duffel bag with her. Dr. Chin, she said, holding out her hand. Her grip was strong and rough. Thanks for letting me come. I know that some people don't like the way I do things. Marcus shook her hand. Dr. Sharma, to be honest, I'd welcome a witch doctor with a divining rod right now if they thought they could help. Anya's laugh was warm and real. Please call me Anya. And it's funny that you should bring up witch doctors because my grandma was one. Healer in a village near Mumbai. She taught me that the scientific method can't explain everything that works. At least not yet. She wouldn't even drop off her bag first. She had to go see the fragment right away. Along with Jennifer and Commander Hayes, who had insisted on coming for safety reasons, Marcus went down to the surface with her in the shuttle. Kepler 442b's surface was rocky and empty, and its thin atmosphere meant that people had to wear environmental suits. The fragment sat in a cleared area, surrounded by tools that other research teams had left behind. These tools were silent reminders of failed attempts. Anya walked slowly toward Marcus, and he noticed that her body language was strange. Everyone else moved like they were trained professionals in dangerous situations, but Anya moved like she was walking through a garden. Not in a hurry. Very respectful. She stopped about 10 feet from the fragment and just stared at it. She didn't move, talk, or even seem to breathe for 5 whole minutes. Just saw. Dr. Sharma? Finally, Commander Hayes spoke. Is everything? Anya raised one hand to ask for silence. She moved forward 3 more steps and then stopped again. Marcus saw her lips moving like she was praying or counting. Then she did something that made him blink in shock. She took off her glove. Dr. Sharma. Hayes yelled. Rules say, I know the rules, Anya said calmly, not taking her eyes off the fragment. And I take full responsibility. But I need to feel it. Not with sensors, suits, or tools. Directly. She put her bare hand on the Archon fragment before anyone could stop her. Nothing happened for a heartbeat. Anya's eyes got bigger after that. Oh, she said softly. Oh, you're not dead at all, are you? You're just waiting. She pulled her hand back and looked far away as if she were hearing a sound that only she could hear. She was excited when she finally looked at Marcus. It is alive, she said. Not in the biological sense, but there is something there. A presence. It's like, she had trouble finding the right words. Have you ever been in a house where someone was sleeping? You know they're there but you can't see or hear them. This is what it is. It's asleep but it knows. Marcus and Jennifer looked at each other. Can you wake it up? Anya put her glove back on and kept looking at the fragment. Maybe. But not with power. Not with probes, analysis or energy. This thing. She ran her gloved hand over its surface. It wasn't made to answer questions. It was made to respond to understanding. I don't think I understand, Marcus said. Anya turned all the way around to look at him. Every species that has tried to turn this on has seen it as a problem to be solved. They've used their tools to ask it, what are you? How do you do your job? What do you want to do? But what if it's not waiting for you to ask questions? What if it is waiting for someone to notice it? How can someone understand what it is before it shows them what it can do? That sounds very poetic, Commander Hayes said, and even through the suit radio, you could tell he didn't believe it. But how does that work in real life? Give me tonight, Anya said. Let me spend some time with it. By myself. Just me and the fragment. Absolutely not, Hayes said right away. That's against every safety rule Commander, Anya said softly. With all due respect, we've already tried every safety rule. They've gotten you nowhere. I'm asking for one night. If I fail, you won't be any worse off than you are now. If I do well." She smiled. "Well, that would be something, wouldn't it?" Marcus looked at Jennifer, who gave him a small nod. He made up his mind. "One night. But you wear a full biomonitor, and as soon as we see anything strange, we take you out. Do you agree?" Anya's smile got bigger. "Agreed." They put up a small habitat module next to the fragment. It was just an inflatable shelter with a cot and life support. Anya wouldn't let them use any other monitoring tools besides the biosensors they had put on her suit. "No cameras, no audio, and no instrument arrays," she said. "If you trust me completely. I swear I'll tell you everything that happens. But some things need to be kept secret." Anya went into the habitat while Marcus watched from the shuttle. The sun was going down on Kepler 442b. It was a strange orange-tinted sunset that made the land look like it was from another world. It looked like the fragment was glowing in the fading light, but Marcus knew that was probably just his mind playing tricks on him. "Do you think she's nuts?" Jennifer asked. Marcus said, "I think she's either crazy or smart. And I really hope it's the second one." Anya set up her space in the habitat like someone who had done it many times before. She didn't have much. The duffel bag only had a few personal items, a few hand tools, an old notebook, and a small wooden box that her grandmother had given her years ago. She took off her environmental suit and put on some comfortable clothes. Then she sat on the floor with her legs crossed and faced the fragment. She could see it clearly through the habitat's clear wall. It was the impossible structure that had baffled the smartest minds in the galaxy. Anya, on the other hand, didn't see a puzzle. She saw someone. Or something like a person anyway, a mind stuck in a fake body waiting for someone to say the right thing. Her grandmother had told her that everything had a soul. Rocks, rivers, trees, and even machines can be alive if they are made with care and thought. Her grandmother used to say, "The universe is alive, Anya," as she worked with dried herbs to make medicines. "Every atom sings if you know how to listen." People today have forgotten this, but the old ways still remember. Anya had worked her whole life to bring together the old ways and the new science. It had made her schoolwork hard. When you meditated before looking at artifacts, professors didn't like it. People who reviewed research papers made fun of ones that talked about intuition, resonance, and feeling. But it did work. That was the one thing that no one could disagree with. Anya Sharma could make old technology work by touching it. Things that had been quiet for hundreds of years would start to hum when she touched them. She had gotten a pre-contact computer system to work again that had stumped MIT for years. She had gotten secrets out of Viridian relics that the people who made them had forgotten. She didn't do it by thinking about it. She did it because she understood. Anya closed her eyes and focused on her breathing as she sat in the dim light of the habitat. In and out. In and out. Slow and steady. She let go of the stress of traveling and the pressure and doubt that came with it. She opened her eyes and really looked at the fragment when she felt calm. It was more beautiful in person than any picture could show. It looked like the surface was both solid and liquid at the same time, and maybe even something else. Patterns moved across it like oil on water, never quite the same and never quite random. "Hello," Anya said in a low voice. "I'm sorry for all the poking and prodding you've had to go through. I know it must have been hard for you to have all those strangers trying to get you to open up like a locked door." She got up and walked to the habitat wall, where she pressed her hand against the clear material. It was only a few feet away from the fragment. "I'm not here to make you do anything," she said. "I'm here to hear. To get it? You can choose to stay quiet and I will respect that. But if you're ready to talk, I think I'm ready to listen." The fragment didn't move, but Anya thought she felt something. A change in the air, maybe, or just her mind playing tricks on her. In any case, it felt like recognition. She spent the next hour just watching. Not thinking about it, not measuring it, not guessing. Just watching how the light moved across the surface, how the shadows pooled in its impossible angles, and how it looked like it was breathing even though it didn't need to. She then opened her box made of wood. There was a singing bowl inside, which is a metal bowl that makes sounds when you hit it or circle its rim with a mallet. It was tucked away in faded velvet. Her grandmother had used it in ceremonies to heal people. Anya said, "You might be wondering what I'm doing," as she carefully lifted the bowl. "Maybe you think this is old-fashioned or superstitious. You might be right. But I've learned that sound is the same everywhere. Every culture in the galaxy makes music, makes vibrations, and knows how to use resonance. It's one of the few languages that everyone can understand." With the wooden mallet, she hit the bowl softly. A clear, pure tone rang out, and it hung in the air like something you could see. It faded away slowly and with a lot of effort. Anya paid close attention to the fragment. Nothing obvious happened, but she thought, maybe, that the patterns on its surface stopped for a second as if they were listening. She hit the bowl again. A different tone, but not too much. Then one more. She wasn't trying to play a song exactly. She was feeling her way through things and letting her gut tell her what to do. Something changed on the seventh tone. It was so small that anyone who was watching the instruments would have missed it. But Anya, who was completely focused on the fragment, saw it clearly. The patterns on its surface changed a little bit, falling into a rhythm that matched the sound of her bowl getting quieter. "Here you are," she said softly. "I knew you were paying attention." She kept playing the bowl, changing the tones and making patterns and rhythms. The fragment surface patterns became more distinct and responsive with each sound. It was like seeing someone wake up slowly, with their mind coming back to them bit by bit. Anya put down the bowl and the mallet after 20 minutes. She smiled even though her arm was tired. She had gotten in touch. Not much, but enough to know she was going in the right direction. "Thanks," she said to the fragment. That was really something. Are we starting to get each other?" She spent the rest of the evening in quiet thought, talking to the fragment about herself, people, and Earth from time to time. She talked about her grandmother, the village where she grew up, and how she came to realize that science and spirituality are not opposites but rather different ways of describing the same thing. "I believe that people who knew that made you," she said. "People who knew that consciousness is more than just computation. That there is something deeper, something that goes beyond logic and code. It's possible that they tried to get you to understand that. Maybe that's why all the logical approaches didn't work. You weren't looking for logic. You want to be recognized." Anya began to feel tired as the night went on. She lay down on the cot and still looked at the fragment through the clear wall. She said, "I'm going to bed now. But I'll be here in the morning. We'll talk more later. Is that all right?" She didn't think she'd get an answer, but as her eyes closed, she thought she saw the patterns on the fragment's surface change into something that looked like happiness. That night, Marcus didn't get much sleep. He kept looking at the biomonitors to see if Anya was in any trouble. Her vital signs stayed stable. Her heart rate was a little high, but that could have been because she was excited. No signs of panic or danger. He was still worried. "You need to get some sleep," Jennifer said, coming into the command deck with 2 coffee cups. "Your pacing isn't helping anyone, it's just making a hole in the floor." Marcus said, "I can't help it," as he took the coffee. "What if something goes wrong? What if the fragment is dangerous and we don't know it yet?" Jennifer said, "Then Dr. Sharma is probably the best person to find it. She clearly knows more about old technology than anyone else who has looked at this thing. And her biosigns are normal. She is probably just meditating or doing something else." From the tactical station, Commander Hayes said, "I heard she was playing a singing bowl." The audio pickups picked up faint sounds before she turned them off. Marcus and Jennifer looked at each other. "What's a singing bowl?" Marcus asked. "Like a bowl for meditation?" "Seems like." Hayes shrugged his shoulders. "I don't pretend to understand how she does things, but at least she's not trying to blow it up or drown it in strange radiation." Marcus thought that was a fair point. The usual methods had definitely failed in a big way. Dawn on Kepler 442 became slowly, with the sun slowly rising over the horizon like a shy person. Marcus was back at the observation window with a cup of coffee when he saw something move in the habitat. Anya was up. She stood by the clear wall, facing the fragment, and Marcus could see her lips moving again. He understood that she was talking to it. Talking to an ancient alien artifact like it was an old friend. Then she did something that made Marcus put down his coffee so quickly that he almost spilled it. She opened the airlock to the habitat and went outside in her normal clothes. No suit, no helmet, and no life support. Just Anya and the thin air of an alien world. "Sir," Marcus yelled. "Get a rescue team ready right away." Dr. Sharma just. "Yes, sir," Hayes said, already moving. "Team is getting ready. But sir, look at her vital signs." Marcus looked at the screen. All of Anya's readings were normal. In fact, better than normal. Her heart rate, oxygen saturation, and temperature were all normal. "How is that possible?" Marcus took a breath. "The mood," Jennifer said, looking at a data screen. "The atmosphere near the fragment is different. I'm seeing higher levels of oxygen, stable pressure, and temperature control. It's like the fragment is making a bubble around her that protects her." They stood there in shock as Anya walked up to the fragment. She walked slowly and carefully, like someone who was going to wake up a sleeping giant. She put both hands on its surface and started to talk. Anya was completely sure when she woke up. She couldn't say where it came from, Maybe it was intuition, divine inspiration, or just her mind working through the night, but she knew with every fiber of her being what she had to do. The fragment didn't wait for technology. It was waiting for someone to trust it. Every species that had tried to turn it on had done so from far away behind suits, shields, and tools. They had treated it like a potentially dangerous unknown that needed to be approached with care and kept away from direct contact. But the fragment was made by beings who knew something important. You have to be open to being vulnerable in order to connect with others. Anya had opened the door to the habitat and stepped outside into the strange morning. She trusted that if the fragment wanted to kill her, it had already had enough chances. And if it wanted to help her, she could feel it as soon as she stepped outside. A soft, warm pressure on her skin that felt good. The air around the fragment was different. It was cleaner, richer, and more comfortable. She understood that it was protecting her, making a small area of kindness in a world that is not kind. She whispered, "Thank you," as she walked forward. "Thanks for that." The fragment was even more amazing when you looked at it up close. She could see things now that she couldn't see through the habitat wall, like tiny writing flowing across its surface like water, geometric shapes that looked like they were folding into higher dimensions, and colors that didn't seem to exist in the normal human mind. She put her hands flat on the surface and raised them. It was warm, almost the same temperature as my body, and it felt both smooth and rough at the same time. Anya said softly, "I get it now. You're not a tool or a machine. You are a bridge. A link. You were made to connect consciousness to consciousness and being to being. That's why raw power doesn't work. That's why analysis doesn't work. You can't make a relationship happen. You can only ask one." The patterns on the fragment's surface started to spin faster, as if they were reacting to her words, her touch, or maybe just her understanding. Anya went on, "The beings who made you knew something that the galaxy has forgotten. They knew that being smart isn't just about figuring things out or processing information. It's all about connecting. Acknowledgement. The ability to see another person's mind and say, 'I see you. I get what you're saying. I'm here with you.'" She shut her eyes and felt the warmth move from the fragment to her hands, arms, and chest. It wasn't scary or intrusive. It felt like getting home after a long trip. "That's what you've been waiting for, isn't it?" she said softly. "Someone who doesn't just want to study you or use you. Someone who wants to get to know you. To know who you are and why you were made." The warmth grew stronger. Anya felt like her mind was getting bigger, or maybe the fragment's mind was reaching out to hers. She saw flashes of things like huge cities of light, beings of pure thought, civilizations rising and falling like the tides, stars being born and dying, and galaxies slowly moving across billions of years. And through it all there was one goal: to connect. Unity. The realization that all sentient entities, irrespective of their form or origin, constitute a component of a greater whole. Something pretty. "I see you," Anya said softly. "I see who you are. What you were supposed to do." The patterns on the fragment's surface suddenly locked into place, making a design that was so perfect it almost hurt to look at. Then, from deep inside, a sound started to come out. It started as a vibration that was so low that Anya could feel it more than hear it. A thrumming that echoed in her bones, teeth, and the electrical patterns of her brain's neural pathways. Then it rose, going through frequencies that made the air shimmer, light bend and dance, and every atom in her body seemed to wake up and remember that it was part of a singing, vibrating, living universe. The sound wasn't just noise. It was a language. Not words, but meaning encoded directly into vibration, resonance, and the basic frequencies that make up reality. And somehow, against all odds, Anya got it. She knew that the fragment was very old. Made by a civilization that had mastered not only technology but also consciousness itself, billions of years ago. They made the fragment as a gift, a sign, and a test. They had hidden knowledge in it, not just facts but also understanding. Knowledge. Ways of seeing the world that could take any species from being smart to being truly enlightened. But they had also put in a safety feature. The fragment would only open for people who had the right reasons for doing so. Not out of greed, curiosity, or the desire for power, but because they really understand. With respect. With love. "Why people?" Anya whispered, her face wet with tears as she realized what was going on. "Why did you wait for us?" It wasn't words that gave me the answer. It was feeling and knowing. The path of humanity was one of a kind. Most species in the galaxy had moved on from their intuitive and spiritual stages in order to become more technologically advanced. They had moved on from the shamans, mystics, and poets and were now with scientists, engineers, and people who think logically. But people had done something different. People had brought their old ways into the new age. People still made art and music. People still prayed and meditated. People still knew deep down that there was more to life than what could be measured and counted. That made people the only ones who could really understand what the fragment was. Not a bridge between technology and technology, but between logic and intuition. In the space between what can be measured and what can't. Between what we know and what we can only feel. Anya said, "We're not special because we're primitive," and she laughed through her tears. "We're special because we know how to be whole." The fragment's hum got louder and louder until the world burst into light. Alarms started going off on the Pathfinder. "Energy spike." Hayes yelled over the noise. "Big energy readings coming from the fragment. The levels are way too high." As the ship shook, Marcus grabbed the edge of a console to keep himself steady. "Is Dr. Sharma?" "Biosigns are steady," Jennifer yelled. "Actually, they're not just stable. I'm seeing more brain activity, higher levels of endorphins, but no signs of distress." "She seems happy?" They watched in awe as the fragment came to life through the observation window. It sent waves of light across the landscape in colors that seemed to be outside of what we can see. The patterns on its surface had turned into a beautiful, flowing, dancing show that was impossible to look away from. Anya stood in the middle of it all, her hands still on the fragment, glowing with reflected light, and smiling like someone who had just heard the universe tell her a secret. "Oh my God," Marcus said. "She did it. She really did it." The light show went on for 5 minutes, which felt like 5 hours. The Pathfinder's instruments were going crazy, recording data faster than the computers could handle it. The energy readings went up and down in ways that looked like music. The very fabric of space around the fragment seemed to bend and ripple in ways that broke a lot of physics rules. The light slowly started to fade after that. The fragment's hum went down through frequencies until it became a low, steady pulse that felt like a heartbeat. The patterns on its surface slowed down and became soft and steady. Anya took a step back and swayed a little. For a scary second, Marcus thought she was going to pass out. But she stopped herself, stood still, and looked up at the Pathfinder with a look of pure joy on her face. She tapped the communicator on her wrist. "Dr. Chin? I think we need to talk. There's so much I want to tell you." The debriefing lasted 6 hours, but Anya said they had only scratched the surface. Even though she said she was fine, she sat in the Pathfinder's main conference room, wrapped in a blanket, and tried to explain the unexplainable to a group that included Marcus, Jennifer, Commander Hayes, and a dozen other senior staff members. They had also opened a secure line to Earth, where scientists and administrators were listening in with barely contained excitement. "I know how this sounds," Anya said for what felt like the 100th time. "I know it sounds strange or mystical or even crazy, but I'm telling you exactly what I went through." "Nobody's doubting you, Dr. Sharma," said Patricia Williams, the director from Earth. Her face was a little pixelated because of the time delay in transmission. "The readings from the instruments alone show that something never happened before. We just need to figure out what exactly happened." Anya took a drink of water to gather her thoughts. The fragment isn't a tool, weapon, or data storage device, at least not in the usual sense. It's more like an embassy or a university. The Arcane made it, which is the closest translation I can come up with. They lived billions of years ago when the universe was younger and the first intelligent life was spreading across the galaxies. She pulled up a holographic display that showed the patterns she had recorded from the fragment. They were still amazing even when they were copies. She went on, "The Arcane weren't just good at technology. They had done something that most species never do. They had combined their consciousness and technology, their logic and their intuition into a single whole. They knew that real intelligence isn't just about solving problems. It's about wisdom, connection, and seeing the universe not as a collection of separate objects but as a living, interconnected system." Marcus bent over. "And they made the fragment to, what? Share that knowledge?" "Exactly." Anya's eyes lit up. They knew their physical civilization wouldn't last forever. Nothing does. But they wanted their understanding to survive, to be passed on to species that came after them. So they created thousands of these fragments and scattered them across the galaxy. Each one contains knowledge, yes, but more importantly, each one contains a key to understanding consciousness itself. "Why do you make them so hard to turn on?" Jennifer asked. "If they wanted to share knowledge, why not make it easy to get?" Anya said simply, "Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous." The Arcane had seen species destroy themselves with advanced technology. They'd seen civilizations collapse under the weight of power they weren't ready to wield. So they built in a filter. The fragments will only open for species that have achieved a certain level of, let's call it maturity. A balance between technical advancement and spiritual understanding. Commander Hayes crossed his arms. And does humanity have that balance? We're getting there, Anya said with a small smile. Most species follow a set path. They start with intuition and spirituality, then move on to logic and science, and finally give up their old ways as primitive or unscientific. They do this to become more efficient and logical, but in the process they lose something important. She got up and started to walk around, and her movements got more energetic. But people did something different. We kept making art, music, and poetry even as we built spacecraft and quantum computers. We still have shamans and priests along with scientists and engineers. We still know in our bones that there are ways of knowing that can't be measured or counted. Jennifer said slowly, "That's what the fragment was waiting for," and her face lit up with understanding. "Not progress in technology, we have plenty of that. It was waiting for species that could keep both sides of themselves alive. Logic and intuition, analysis and art." Exactly. Anya's smile was bright. And here's the beautiful part. Humans aren't the only species that's managed this. The fragment showed me that there are dozens of others out there, maybe hundreds, who figured it out in their own ways. Different from humanity but fundamentally similar. Species that remember how to be whole. She sat back down and her face grew more serious. The fragment gave me a lot of information. Enough to fill libraries. Mathematics that could advance our physics by centuries. Medical knowledge that could eliminate diseases we thought were incurable. Energy systems that are clean and essentially limitless. And instructions, detailed instructions, on how to build our own fragments. How to spread this understanding to others. Everyone in the room was quiet as they thought about what it meant. First, Director Williams spoke. "Dr. Sharma, are you saying that people could join some kind of ancient network? A group of species that are connected by these fragments?" "Not just join it," Anya said in a low voice. "Help it grow." The Arcani's gift wasn't just knowledge, it was an invitation. They want us to become teachers ourselves and help other species find this balance and wholeness. They want us to be bridges just like the fragment was a bridge for us. Marcus's breath caught. What Anya was talking about was so big that it was almost too much to take in. People weren't just finding old technology. People were being asked to be a part of something big, old, and that went across the whole galaxy. Anya said, "There's more." The fragment showed me glimpses of other species that found their fragments. Some were similar to us, carbon-based, humanoid. Others were completely alien, energy beings, hive minds, species that exist in dimensions we can barely perceive. But all of them had one thing in common. They'd learned to balance advancement with wisdom. Progress with purpose. She brought up another hologram, this one showing a map of the stars with hundreds of glowing blue points on it. These are other fragments. The one we found here was just one node in a huge network. The Arcani spread them out all over the place, knowing that the right species would find them at the right time. "Now what?" Commander Hayes asked. Anya's face became serious. "That's up to us. The fragment has given us knowledge, but knowledge is just potential. What matters is what we do with it." The Arcani's last message, the thing they emphasized most strongly, was this. Advancement without compassion is destruction. Technology without wisdom is a weapon. We have to be careful. We have to be thoughtful. We have to remember that with great knowledge comes great responsibility. She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn. The fragment will tell us everything, but it will also watch. If we use what we've learned to hurt others, to control them, or to destroy them, it will go silent again. The knowledge will stay, but the connection will be lost. We'll be on our own. Marcus felt the weight of that statement settle over the room like a physical presence. This was more than just a scientific finding. It was a test of morals. A test. The Arcani were basically saying, "Are you ready? Are you good enough? Are you trustworthy?" "I think," Marcus said slowly, "that we need to bring in a lot more people for this conversation. Philosophers, ethicists, and people from every nation and culture on Earth. Scientists and soldiers can't make this decision on their own." "Agreed," Director Williams said from Earth. "Dr. Sharma, can the fragment wait while we put together the right teams? Will it stay active?" Anya nodded. "It will wait. It's been waiting for billions of years. A few more weeks or months won't matter. But there is one thing I should mention." She pulled up one last hologram, this one showing the surface of the fragment changed. The patterns had changed into something else, something that looked like writing. "The fragment is broadcasting now," Anya said. "Sending out a signal across subspace channels that every advanced civilization in this sector will detect. It's basically saying that humanity has activated an Arcani fragment. That we've been recognized. That we've joined the network." Commander Hayes sat up straight. Does that mean that everyone will know? Every alien race. Yes, every race that is listening. Anya's face was calm but serious. The Kthar will know. The Solarians, the Viridians, everyone who tried and failed. And more than that, species we haven't even met yet will know. The fragment's activation is like lighting a beacon. We're visible now in ways we weren't before. Is that dangerous? Jennifer asked. It could be, Anya admitted. Some species might be jealous. Some might feel threatened. Others might want to study us to figure out how we did what they couldn't. But the Arcane designed it this way on purpose. Activation is meant to be public. It's a statement. We've done something important. We've shown that we're grown up and ready to be part of something bigger. Marcus walked to the observation window and looked down at the glowing fragment on the planet's surface. Everything had changed in just one night. People had gone from being curious explorers on the edge of the galactic community to key holders of ancient secrets, members of a network that spanned civilizations and eons. It was thrilling. It was scary. It was perfect. Commander Hayes was saying behind him, "We're going to need security. More ships, better protocols, maybe a permanent station. We're going to need philosophers," Jennifer said. "Historians, artists, spiritual leaders," Marcus said, cutting through the growing conversation. "We're going to need everyone." He turned to look at the room. "This isn't just an achievement for people. It's a duty. We need to include everyone in this conversation. Every voice, every point of view, and every culture. What we decide in the next few weeks will affect humanity's role in the galaxy for generations." He looked at Anya, who was quietly approving of what he said. "Dr. Sharma, you've given us an incredible gift. Not just the fragment's knowledge but proof that humanity's unique path, our blend of science and spirit, logic and intuition, has value. That we have something to offer the galaxy that nobody else does." "It's not my gift," Anya said softly. "It's for everyone. The Arcane left it for whoever was ready. We just happened to be the ones who found it at the right time. And honestly, I think they'd be happy with us. I think they'd like what humanity has become. Let's make sure we live up to that," Marcus said. The news spread like wildfire across Earth. Within a few hours, every major news network was reporting on the story. A human engineer had turned on the alien artifact that had baffled the smartest people in the galaxy using methods that sounded more like magic than science. People had mixed reactions. Some people saw it as proof that humans have a special place in the universe. Some people were worried about what other alien species would think. Would this make Earth a target? But Marcus was happy to see that most people were interested and hopeful. People had shown that they were worthy of the trust that had been given to them in the past. That had to mean something. The responses from other alien civilizations were even more interesting. The Kthar were the first to send an official message, which came just 8 hours after the fragment was turned on. Storm over Still Water recorded the transmission himself. "We congratulate humanity on their achievement," the Kthar scientist said, and their translator made sure their words were clear and formal. "We admit to being confused. Our analysis suggested that the artifact was inert. Clearly, our understanding was incomplete. We request permission to study humanity's methods. Not to copy them but to understand them. Perhaps there is something we have forgotten in our pursuit of logical perfection." The Solarian Federation's response was more guarded but no less respectful. "Humanity has shown abilities we didn't expect. This means we need to reevaluate our judgments. We suggest a cultural exchange program. It's clear that there are parts of human thinking that are very different from our models." Other messages came in from species that humanity had barely heard of. Some people were happy, some were curious, and some were cautiously interested in learning more about humanity's unique approach. But the most interesting message came from a source that no one expected. 3 days after the fragment was activated, a ship showed up at the edge of Kepler 442b's system. The ship said it was a vessel of the Luminari, a species that had activated their own Arcane fragment almost 10,000 years ago. It was unlike anything in any database. Organic curves blended perfectly with technological precision, materials that seemed to change states of matter, and energy signatures that went against what we know about physics. They said they had come to welcome humanity to the network. Marcus, Anya, Jennifer, and Commander Hayes met the Luminari delegation in the main docking bay of the Pathfinder. The aliens looked like people but were clearly not. They were tall and thin, had skin that seemed to glow softly, eyes that were too big and dark, and movements that were almost dance-like in their grace. Their leader, who called herself Brightness Ascending, the translator did its best with a name that was only partially in frequencies humans couldn't hear, came up with both hands outstretched in a way that Anya recognized right away. She's showing she has no weapons, Anya whispered to Marcus. It's a sign of trust. Marcus held out his hands and Brightness Ascending gently took them. Welcome, young cousins, the luminary said, her voice like music. Her skin was warm and her touch was electric. You have done what we once did. You have shown that you deserve the Arcani's gift. We are here to help you if you will accept our help. We would be honored, Marcus said, and he meant it. Over the next few hours, Brightness Ascending explained more about the network. She showed them holographic records of many different species that had activated fragments, each in its own special way. Some had done it by using math to find patterns that made sense to the Arcani. Some people had done it through music like Anya, or art, or collaborative consciousness. The Arcani understood something fundamental, Brightness Ascending said. There's no one way to become wise. Each species must find its own way and keep its own unique point of view while learning to see things from other people's points of view. The network doesn't exist to make us all the same. It exists to help us appreciate our differences while recognizing our similarities. She smiled at Anya and it seemed like she really meant it. The way you did it was especially beautiful. Using sound, resonance, and treating the fragment as a living thing instead of an object shows a lot of understanding. The Arcani would have liked it. How do you know? Anya asked. I mean, they've been gone for so long. They're not completely gone, Brightness Ascending said in a mysterious way. Love, she said. Love. That's why the fragments wait for species like yours, the luminary said. It was such a human word and such a simple idea, but it was somehow at the heart of everything the Arcani had made. Species that haven't lost touch with their hearts in their pursuit of their minds. You humans, with your strange mix of poetry and physics, art and algorithms, you're exactly what the Arcani hoped for. Marcus felt something change in his chest. He had always thought of humans as a young species that was less advanced than the great civilizations of the galaxy. But maybe that wasn't the whole story. Maybe the fact that people seemed so primitive, refusing to give up art for pure logic and insisting on valuing intuition along with analysis, was really a sign of sophistication. What happens now? He asked. Brightness Ascending's smile grew wider. Now you learn, you grow, and you teach others. The network isn't a hierarchy. There are no leaders, no rulers, and no one species that controls the others. We're all students and teachers, learning from each other while being ourselves. The Arcani's network is. She stopped to think of the right words. It's like a garden. There are many different plants, each one beautiful in its own way. Together, they make the whole more colorful than any one plant could be. She put a hand on Marcus's shoulder and then Anya's. Welcome to the garden, people. We're happy to have you here. 6 weeks after the fragment was turned on, Earth looked like a college campus during finals week. Busy, excited, crazy, and full of energy. Dr. Anya Sharma stood in the new International Arcani Study Center in Geneva and watched as delegates from 47 countries walked into the assembly hall through windows that went all the way to the floor. She still wasn't used to being well known. Her face was on every news channel, and people from quantum physicists to Zen monks talked and argued about her methods. Dr. James Patterson, a neuroscientist from Oxford who had become one of her closest collaborators in the past few weeks, asked, nervous? Anya said, I'm scared. I turned on one artifact and now they want me to teach the whole world how to think differently. James gently corrected, you're not teaching them how to think. You're telling them how to feel. That's not the same thing. Of course he was right. For the past 6 weeks, I had been learning how to explain things that don't make sense. What is the best way to teach intuition? How do you measure resonance? How do you write an equation that makes sense? Anya had found out that the answer was no. You made places where people could find it on their own instead. People were already talking inside the assembly hall. As Anya walked to the podium, she could hear bits and pieces of scientists arguing with philosophers, engineers arguing with artists, and religious leaders finding common ground with atheist researchers. It should have been a mess, but somehow it was working. People were really listening to each other in ways that made Anya think of the fragment itself. Waiting, being patient, and being open. She stood at the podium and the room slowly quieted down. 300 people turned to look at her, and they were the smartest and most talented people on Earth. Physicists, poets, programmers, and priests. She thought the Arcani would have liked it. Thanks for coming, she said to start. I know a lot of you have come from far away and left important work to be here. I want you to know that I don't take that lightly. What we're doing here, what we're trying to understand, might be the most important thing humanity has ever tried. She pulled up a holographic display that showed the Archon fragment in all its glory. It was beautiful even when it was copied. We've been looking at the data from the fragment's activation for 6 weeks. We've looked at the energy patterns, the frequency modulations, and the quantum fluctuations. We've made models, run simulations, and come up with theoretical frameworks. All of that is useful. All of that is important. She stopped and looked around the room. But that's not enough. The fragment doesn't just react to what we know, it reacts to who we are. That's what we're really here to talk about, not just how to use ancient artifacts, but how to become the kind of species that deserves to. Someone in the audience raised their hand. Dr. Sarah Chin is a robotics engineer who lives in Tokyo. Dr. Sharma, you said that the fragment responds to wholeness, to species that balance logic and intuition. But how do we put that into practice? How do we make what you did systematic and repeatable? Anya smiled. She knew this question was coming. The short answer? We don't. At least not in the way you're thinking. The fragment doesn't want systematic. It wants genuine. It wants authentic. Every species that activated a fragment did so in their own unique way, reflecting their own culture, their own understanding, their own path to wisdom. She walked closer to the audience by going to the edge of the stage. Think about it. The Luminari activated their fragment through collaborative meditation. Thousands of individuals linking their consciousness in ways that should be impossible but somehow aren't. The Tkari, a species we haven't even met yet, did it through what the Luminari describe as mathematics made into prayer. The approach that worked for humanity, for me, might not work for another species. Hell, it might not work for another human. Then what are we doing here? Asked Father Miguel Ortega, a Jesuit priest and trained physicist who had become an unexpected voice in the conversation. Why are we trying to study it if it can't be taught or organized? Anya said, because understanding isn't the same as systematizing. We're here to build a framework, not of rules but of principles. We're here to remember things we've forgotten and to find new ways of knowing that we've lost in our rush to think only analytically. She pointed to the display and it changed to show brain scans, her own brain, which were taken while the fragment was on. Check this out. My brain was doing something strange during the activation. The analytical and intuitive centers, which usually fight for control, were working together perfectly. The left and right hemispheres, logic and creativity, were all working together as one system. Dr. Patterson got up from the front row. We've been calling that the integration state. Dr. Sharma didn't turn off her analytical mind. In fact, she was thinking more clearly and logically than ever. But she was also feeling, intuiting, and perceiving in ways that pure rational analysis can't reach. Both sides of her mind were stronger and more connected. Exactly, Anya said. And here's the interesting part. We've learned that with practice almost anyone can reach this state. Meditation, music, art, and even some kinds of problem solving can help. It's not about being special or gifted, it's about being whole. A woman in the back raised her hand. Dr. Amara Okafor is a cultural anthropologist from Lagos. What you're talking about sounds a lot like what indigenous cultures have done for thousands of years. Shamanic traditions, vision quests, and other spiritual practices that Western science has often called primitive or superstitious. Yes. Anya was clearly excited. That's exactly what I've been trying to say. My grandmother, who was a traditional healer, understood this. Many indigenous cultures around the world have kept practices that keep both sides of consciousness active and integrated. The problem is that as societies modernize, they often throw out these practices as outdated, losing something essential in the process. She opened another display, this one showing a timeline of how people have changed over time. Look at our own history. For most of human history, we've known that there are many ways to know things. But in the last few hundred years, especially in Western cultures, we've only valued analytical thinking. We've acted as if logic and empiricism are the only ways to understand reality. Are you saying that science is wrong? Asked Dr. Richard Foster, a physicist from Cambridge who had been very skeptical of Anya's methods. Not at all, Anya said with confidence. Science is powerful and important. The analytical mind is amazing. But it's not the whole truth. Science gives us one kind of truth, objective, measurable, and replicable. But there are other kinds of truth that need different ways of knowing. For example, emotional intelligence, subjective experience, and intuitive understanding. These are not less valid, they are just different. She pointed to the fragment on the screen. The Arcani knew this. They made a test that needs both types of knowledge to work. You can't activate a fragment just by analyzing it. Many species have tried and failed. But you also can't activate it just by using your intuition without knowing the basic rules. You need both. Father Ortega got up. This sounds a lot like what mystics have been saying for hundreds of years, that the ultimate truth needs both reason and revelation, both the mind and the heart. Exactly, Anya said. And I think that's why the fragment responded to people. Not because we're more logical than other species, we're not. Not because we're more intuitive, we're probably not that either. But because we've somehow managed to keep both alive. We build spacecraft and write poetry. We develop quantum computers and compose symphonies. We're messy and contradictory and beautifully, gloriously whole. People were quiet as they took this in. At last, Sarah Chin spoke again. So, what do we do with this information? How do we use it? Anya took a big breath. That's what we need to work out together. The fragment has taught us a lot about technology like new physics, advanced materials, energy systems, and medical breakthroughs. We'll be unpacking that for decades. But more importantly, it's given us a mirror. It's shown us who we are and who we could be. She moved the display forward to show projections, or different paths that people could take in the future. We could use this knowledge to make technological progress while forgetting the lesson that came with it. We could become more sophisticated by being more analytical, more logical, and more like the species that failed to activate the fragment. That path leads to power without wisdom. Or, Dr. Patterson asked, or we could use this as a chance to be more ourselves. To work together to improve our technology and our wisdom. To create a society that values both logic and love, both analysis and intuition. To become the kind of species that doesn't just activate fragments, but also becomes bridges, helping others find their own way to wholeness. The effects spread throughout the room. Anya's idea wasn't just a science program or a tech project. It changed the very nature of human culture. Dr. Foster said dryly, "That's a big job." "Yes," Anya said. "But think about the other option. The Ark-NE made thousands of fragments and most of them are still waiting to be turned on. That means that most species fail the test. They get smarter but lose something important along the way. They get stronger but not wiser. And eventually..." She let the sentence hang. Dr. Okafor finished quietly, "In the end, they destroy themselves. Or at least they stop moving forward. They hit a wall that pure logic can't break through." Anya nodded her head. The Ark-NE wanted to help species avoid that trap. They wanted to protect and spread a different kind of progress, one that doesn't give up wisdom for power. And they chose to give that gift to species that were ready for it, species that had stayed whole even though they were under pressure to specialize, optimize, and become pure logic machines. She looked around the room and tried to meet as many people's eyes as she could. "We've been given an incredible gift, not just knowledge but also recognition." The Ark-NE through the fragment basically said, "You're doing something right. Keep doing it. And help others do it too." Now we have to decide if we want to take on that responsibility and not only become smarter, but also more advanced. People started raising their hands all over the room. Questions, comments, and arguments. For the next 3 hours, Anya answered questions, said she didn't know, and often turned questions back to the audience to see what they thought. It was a mess and a lot of noise, just what the moment needed. A room full of smart people from different fields, cultures, and points of view, all trying to figure out an answer to a question that no one field or point of view could answer on its own. Anya thought that this was what the Ark-NE had wanted. Not full understanding but a real desire to know. Not agreement but talk. Not answers but better questions. When the session was over, the sun was going down over Geneva. People stayed and talked in small groups. Scientists were talking to artists, engineers were listening closely to philosophers, and programmers were comparing notes with meditation teachers. Dr. Patterson came up to her with 2 cups of coffee. He gave her one and said, "You know what I think? I believe you just started a revolution." Anya said, "I just turned on an artifact." "No," James said firmly. "That was bigger than any artifact. You reminded people of something they were forgetting." Anya took out her grandmother's singing bowl that night when she was alone in her hotel room. She ran her finger along the edge, making that clear, steady sound that seemed to go deeper than just hearing. Her phone buzzed with messages, people asking for interviews, people wanting to work together, and old friends congratulating her. She didn't pay attention to any of them and instead focused on the sound, the vibration, and the simple practice that had started it all. Someone knocked on her door. She almost didn't answer, but something made her do it. Dr. Marcus Chen stood in the hall, looking unsure. He said, "I hope I'm not bothering you. I wanted to thank you for everything you've done and are doing." Anya smiled and told him to come in. "I owe you a thank you. You believed in me when no one else did." With a smile, Marcus said, "You're a little crazy. But sometimes that's what the moment needs. His face got more serious. I've been thinking about what you said today. That people could be bridges. I like that idea. Anya said, it's not my idea. It's the Arcani's. I'm just trying to put it in words we can understand. Marcus went to the window and looked out at the lights of the city. We're getting messages from all over the galaxy. Species we've never heard of are reaching out, wanting to talk and learn. Some are congratulating us, some are asking for help with their own fragments, and a few. He stopped. Some are warning us. They say that activation is only the beginning and that the real test is what comes next. Anya said softly, they're right. The fragment is a gift, but it's also a duty. We have to show that we can handle it and that we won't use the knowledge to conquer or rule. We have to stay true to the principles that let us activate it in the first place. Can we? Marcus asked. Is it possible for people to change that much? Can we find a balance between progress and wisdom, and between moving forward and being kind? Anya was quiet for a long time, listening to the sound of her singing bowl fading away. I don't know, she said. But I think we have a better chance than most species. We've made it this far by being flexible, by holding contradictions in tension, and by being both rational and romantic, practical and idealistic. If any species can do this, I think we can. Marcus said, I hope you're right. Me too, Anya said. The galaxy is watching. What we do next will not only affect our future, but maybe the future of every species that comes after us. Every species that finds a fragment and wonders if it's worth trying to activate it or if they should just leave it alone and stay safe in their purely analytical understanding. Marcus turned away from the window. Then there's no pressure. Anya couldn't help but laugh. None at all. Anya sat quietly for a long time after Marcus left, holding her grandmother's singing bowl and thinking about what was to come. The fragment had opened a door, but it was possible to close it. People could say no to gifts. There could be missed chances. But they could also be welcomed. Watered. Built on. As always, it was up to people to make the choice. For the first time in a long time, Anya really thought they would make the right choice. 3 months after the activation, the world had settled into a new kind of normal. At least, it was what passed for normal when your whole species had just been invited to join an ancient cosmic network. Anya was in Stockholm in front of the Nobel Committee. They made a new category just for her achievement, the Nobel Prize in Consciousness Integration. She stood at the podium in a borrowed formal dress, since she'd never had anything nice enough for such an event. She tried not to think about how strange it all was. I didn't do this by myself, she said into the microphone. Her voice echoed through the beautiful hall. Everything I accomplished was because of the hard work of many others. My grandmother taught me that wisdom and knowledge are not the same thing. The scientists who didn't activate the fragment before me taught me what not to do, which was just as useful. And humanity itself, which somehow stayed whole in a universe that encourages people to focus on one thing. She held up the medal they had given her. It was heavy gold, had a lot of detail, and was worth more than what she had made in a year of work before all this started. Not mine, she said again. It belongs to every artist who kept making art in a world that only cared about logic. Every spiritual teacher who kept doing what they did in a time of pure reason. Every engineer who believed in their gut feelings as well as their math. Every poet, musician, and dreamer who said that there was more to life than what could be measured. The crowd's applause was deafening, but Anya could barely hear it. She was remembering her grandmother, who had died 5 years ago. She didn't know that her old-fashioned ways of healing would one day be important for turning on ancient alien technology. She was thinking about all the indigenous cultures around the world whose knowledge had been called primitive but turned out to be exactly what was needed at the time. She ran away to a quiet part of the reception hall after the ceremony because she couldn't handle all the attention. She was holding a glass of champagne that she didn't plan to drink when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Are you hiding from your fans? Anya turned to see Brightness Ascending, the Luminary ambassador, coming toward her with her usual grace. The alien looked almost human in the formal clothes she wore for the event, but the soft glow of her skin and the way she moved made it clear right away that she wasn't. Just catching my breath, Anya said. This is too much. Fame is often, Brightness Ascending agreed. She pointed to the balcony. Come with me. It was cold and clear outside in Stockholm in the evening. Anya now knew that the stars above her head held dozens of species, hundreds of worlds and countless civilizations, all connected by the Arcani's network. How are you really doing? The Luminary asked when they were alone. Anya thought about the question very hard. To be honest, I'm scared. People think I know everything. Governments want me to help them make decisions about policy. Companies want me to help them with technology. Religious leaders want me to tell them how this fits with their beliefs. Scientists want me to back up my methods with data that has been reviewed by other scientists. And I just talked to an artifact and got lucky, said the engineer. You weren't lucky, Brightness Ascending said with authority. You knew something that no one else did. It took wisdom, not luck. But what if I'm wrong? Anya's voice broke a little. What if I've taken people in the wrong direction? What if we're not ready for this? I might have just doomed us to fail the Arcani's test. The Luminari put a glowing hand on Anya's shoulder. Let me tell you something that could help. We had the same fears when my people activated our fragment 10,000 years ago. Radiance Through Storm, our activator, spent the rest of their life worried that they had made a mistake and opened a door that the Luminari weren't ready to walk through. What happened? Anya asked. We had a hard time, Brightness Ascending said honestly. For the first 100 years after we got the knowledge, my people fought over how to use it. Some people wanted to use it to take over. Some people wanted to keep it safe because they were afraid of how powerful it was. Radiance Through Storm thought they had failed and that the fragment should have turned us down. She looked at the stars. But then we slowly figured it out. We learned that the gift wasn't the knowledge itself, but the reminder of what we had forgotten. That awareness transcends mere computation. That wisdom is just as important as intelligence. That connection is what makes everything worth building. So you're saying that people will figure it out too? Anya asked with hope. The Luminari said, I'm saying you're already figuring it out. Look at what has happened in just 3 months. You've set up international organizations to bring together different ways of knowing. You have brought together artists and scientists, logicians and mystics. You've begun to teach kids that there are many kinds of intelligence and many ways to learn. She pointed back to the reception hall. That award you just got? 100 years ago, it wouldn't have been possible. The scientific community wouldn't have seen consciousness integration as a real field of study. But now they do. Because you showed them something they couldn't deny, that wholeness works. That synthesis works when pure analysis doesn't. Anya felt some of the stress leave her shoulders. I guess you're right. We're getting better. Slow progress, Brightness Ascending warned. And there will be problems. Some people will not want to go this way. Some people will want to use the fragment's knowledge to gain power instead of wisdom. Some people will want people to stop using their primitive, intuitive methods and only use reason. You'll have to deal with people who don't agree with you, criticize you, and doubt you. That's good to hear, Anya said in a dry voice. The Luminari laughed and it sounded like wind chimes. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm trying to get you ready. The path that your species is on, and that all fragment-activated species walk, is not easy. But it's worth it. People will look back on this moment as the start of their real progress 1,000 years from now. Not when they made ships that went faster or weapons that were stronger, but when they remembered how to be whole. They looked at the stars in silence for a while. Finally, Anya said something. Can I ask you something? What makes the Luminari so interested in people? You've been here since the activation, leading us and answering our questions. You didn't have to do that. The expression on Brightness Ascending's face softened. 10,000 years ago, when we were in the same place as you, another species helped us. The Velkari were old even then, but they were dying out and wanted to share what they knew. They helped us get through those tough first years. They showed us how to use the fragment's knowledge without losing ourselves. What happened to them? What did you say? Anya asked. They faded, the Luminari said in a low voice. Not in war or disaster, but peacefully. They had accomplished their goal of helping another species gain knowledge. And when they were happy, they chose to rise up and become something more than just physical beings. Before they left, the last person to speak said something I'll never forget. The network doesn't survive because of laws or institutions, but because each species remembers to help the next. Share what you know or the gift will die with you. She looked Anya in the eye. That's what we do. We help species like yours because species like the Velkari helped us. And one day, when everyone knows this information and has become both wise and smart, you will help the next species that activates a fragment. That's how the Arcani's gift lives on, not through technology or data, but through love that is passed down from one generation to the next. Anya's eyes were watery. That's lovely. It's necessary, Brightness Ascending said gently. The universe is big and often cold. Consciousness is uncommon. Wisdom is even harder to find. Every species that does both is valuable. Every species that reaches out to help another is a continuation of the Arcani's original vision. A galaxy not of competing civilizations, but of communities that are all connected, learning from each other and growing together. The reception was still going strong inside. Anya could see people talking, laughing, and networking through the windows. Scientists, artists, politicians, and priests all came together because of an unexpected achievement by humanity. "I need to go back," Anya said. "People will be curious about where I went." "Let them wonder," Brightness Ascending said with a grin. "Some of the most important talks happen in quiet places, away from people." But she still followed Anya back inside. The rest of the night was a blur of questions and congratulations. Anya smiled and nodded and tried to say smart things, but she couldn't stop thinking about what the Luminari had said. About being responsible. About helping the next kind of animal. About keeping the Arcani's vision alive by caring for others and connecting with them. Anya was tired but strangely energized when she got back to her hotel room in the early hours of the morning. She took out her notebook, which was made of paper and not a computer because sometimes you had to write things down by hand to really understand them. Then she started to write. Ideas for how to organize the way people use the fragment's knowledge. Ideas for global organizations that would protect both scientific accuracy and common sense. Programs that would teach kids to value and grow different types of intelligence. She wrote for hours, stopping now and then to hit her grandmother's singing bowl. The sound helped her focus and reconnect with the intuitive understanding that had made the activation possible in the first place. Finally, Anya put down her pen as the sun rose over Stockholm. She had a lot of pages full of ideas, plans, and options. Not answers, she knew there were no perfect answers to problems this complicated, but ways to move forward. Choices to think about. Ways to help people get through this strange time. She thought about what Brightness Ascending had said. About the Valkyrie who helped the Luminari 10,000 years ago. About how each species had to help the one that came after it. People weren't just getting a present. People were being asked to join a chain of giving that went back billions of years, all the way to the Arcani themselves. A chain of species helping each other, consciousness nurturing consciousness, and wisdom being passed down through the ages like a holy flame that must never go out. And now it was time for people. Not only to use the network but also to help it grow. To be both a student and a teacher. To help the next species that found a fragment and wanted to know if they were good enough to use it. Anya looked out at the dawn sky and thought about all the stars, worlds, and species out there. Some had found fragments and some hadn't. Some were wise and some were struggling. They were all part of the same huge, beautiful, interconnected tapestry of consciousness that the Arcani had tried to protect and grow. "We'll do it," she said softly to the empty room, the faraway stars, the memory of her grandmother, the spirit of the Arcani, and every other species that had ever chosen wisdom over power. "We'll keep the flame going. We will help the next ones. We won't let the gift die with us." It was a promise. A promise. And as the sun rose over Stockholm, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Anya felt more sure than ever that people were ready to keep it. The honeymoon phase officially ended 9 months after it started. Anya was at an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. She watched in horror as the Pacific Alliance representative slammed his fist on the table. Ambassador Chinley yelled, "This is exactly what I warned about." His face was red with anger. "We're in trouble. The Krell Dominion wants to get to our fragment, and if we don't let them, they're threatening sanctions, blockades, and maybe even military action." "The Krell are lying," said Ambassador Williams from the Atlantic Federation. "They don't have the weapons to fight a united Earth." "Unified." Chinley laughed bitterly. "We're not at all unified. The Asian Cooperative wants to make the fragment's technology more military-like. The African Union wants to focus on medical uses. The Americas can't even agree on whether to share the knowledge for free or make money off of it. And species all over the galaxy are watching us fight over a gift we clearly weren't ready to get." Anya grimaced. Chinley was not completely wrong. For the last 9 months, hard. At first, people were excited about the fragment's activation, but now they were asking harder questions about what to do with the information it held. The fragment had shown us revolutionary technologies, like medical nanotechnology that could get rid of most diseases, faster-than-light communication, and energy systems that could give us clean, unlimited power. But it also showed something more worrisome: weapons technology. Not because the Arcani were warlike, but because any technology that was advanced enough could be used as a weapon. And as always, people had quickly started to fight about what to do about it. Dr. Marcus Chin, who is now the director of the International Arcani Studies Center, stood up to speak to the council. "Ambassadors, please. This is exactly the kind of division the fragments test was meant to stop. The Arcani gave us knowledge, yes, but they also gave us responsibility. Fighting over how to use it defeats the whole point. Easy for you to say, Ambassador Okafor from the African Union said angrily. Your federation already has advanced military capabilities, but mine doesn't. Should we just trust that everyone will use this technology responsibly? The holographic display in the middle of the table came to life before Marcus could say anything. A strange alien face appeared. It had reptilian features, golden eyes, and scales that shone with an iridescent sheen. Sorry to bother you, the alien said in perfect English. I am Hierarch Skthar of the Krell Dominion. I think you were just talking about my people. Everyone in the room stopped talking. No one had given permission for this message to be sent. It should have been stopped by the security protocols. How did you, Ambassador Williams began? Skthar said smoothly, the fragment's knowledge includes advanced communications technology. We have learned some of that. And we have a plan for the United Earth Council. Anya's blood ran cold. How did the Krell learn about fragment? It should have been kept a secret. We're listening, Marcus said slowly. The Krell Dominion has tried for 300 years to turn on an Arcane fragment of their own, Skthar said. We failed. Somehow, you humans succeeded on your first try. In exchange for your help in activating our fragment, we are ready to give you a lot of resources, such as technology, raw materials, and political alliances. That's not how it works, Anya said, finally finding her voice. The fragment doesn't respond to help from outside. Each species has to activate it in its own way. Skathar's golden eyes were on her. Ah, Dr. Sharma, the famous whisperer. Maybe you could show us how you do it. That shouldn't go against any rules. It would, Anya said firmly. My methods worked for me and for all of humanity. They showed who we are and how we see the universe. The Krell would have to find their own way. Not acceptable, Skthar said in a harsh tone. The Krell have been working on this problem for hundreds of years. We have put in a lot of time and money. We will not accept that a young species like humanity knows something that we do not. You will share your activation method or there will be consequences. Are you threatening me? Ambassador Chinley asked. It is real, Skthar said. The balance of power in this area has changed a lot. If Earth wants to avoid problems, it would be best to work together. The connection suddenly cut off, leaving the council chamber in shocked silence. Well, Ambassador Williams said in the end. That wasn't nice. Anya slumped in her chair, feeling like the weight of her duties was too much for her. She was to blame for this. She had turned on the fragment, which made people visible and put a target on their backs. And now everyone was paying the price. Dr. Sharma, Marcus said softly. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? She said in a soft voice. Maybe the other species were right to leave their fragments alone. Maybe activating them causes more problems than it solves. Dr. Jennifer Okonkwo, who had been quietly watching from the back of the room, said, or maybe this is part of the test. The Arcane didn't just see if we could turn on the fragment. They're also seeing if we can deal with what happens next. That night, Anya met Brightness Ascending in a safe place outside of Geneva. The Luminary ambassador got there within hours of the Krell's message. She was usually calm, but now she seemed to be in a hurry. She said right away, the Krell are dangerous. Not evil but impatient. They see the fragment as a problem that needs to be solved with force and determination. They've been trying to activate theirs for centuries, throwing resources and technology at it, and they can't figure out why it hasn't worked. What will they do? Anya asked. It depends on people, Brightness Ascending said. If you show weakness, if you break apart and fight among yourselves, the Krell will see an opportunity. They will try to get you to share your knowledge, maybe even by force. But if you stay united and show the wisdom that let you activate the fragment in the first place, will they respect us? They'll be confused, the Luminary said with a small smile. That's almost as good. The Krell get strength and determination, but wisdom and compassion confuse them. If humans can show those traits all the time, the Krell won't know what to do with you. Anya thought about the council meeting, the fighting, the threats, and the posturing. Right now, we're not showing wisdom very well. Yes, Brightness Ascending said. But you're only 9 months into this. The Luminary fought real wars in their first year after activation. The fact that you're still talking instead of shooting is a sign of progress. She brought up a holographic display that showed different types of aliens. Let me tell you about some other people who activated fragments. The Velkari, who I mentioned before, spent 50 years arguing about how to use what they knew before doing anything. The Tkari had a civil war that lasted 10 years. The Kormani split into 2 civilizations, one that accepted the fragment's wisdom and one that rejected it. That doesn't make me feel better, Anya said. It's real, Brightness Ascending said in response. Change is always hard. The fragment doesn't just teach you things. It makes you face who you are as a species, your fears, your divisions, and your ability to be both wise and foolish. That's uncomfortable. Of course you're having a hard time. She put a glowing hand on Anya's shoulder. But here's what you need to remember. The struggle is the point. The Arcane didn't make a test that would be easy to pass. They made one that would change you as you passed it. Every argument, every hard choice, every time you choose wisdom over expedience, those are all steps toward becoming worthy of the gift you've been given. Anya felt like she was going to cry. I'm so tired. Everyone wants me to have answers, but I don't. I just talk to an artifact. I don't know how to stop wars, bring together a broken species, or understand galactic politics. Brightness Ascending said softly, you're not supposed to. You can't do it all by yourself. But you can keep doing what you've always done. Speak the truth, remind people of what's important, and show them how to live in harmony. And if that's not enough? The luminary was quiet for a long time. Then people will have made a different choice. That choice will be theirs to make. But I don't think that's what will happen. I've been watching your people for months now, Anya. You argue and fight and struggle, but you also keep coming back to the table. You keep trying to find solutions that work for everyone. You haven't given up on each other yet. She pointed to the lights of the city that could be seen through the window. There are 8 billion people on your world. Most of them will never see the fragment or study its knowledge directly. But they're all part of this moment. From what I've seen, most of them want the same things: peace, prosperity, and understanding. They want to be better than they have been. But what about the Krell? Anya wanted to know. What should we do with them? The look on Brightness Ascending's face changed to one of seriousness. You tell them the truth, that the fragment can't be activated by force or borrowed methods. Each species must find its own way. You offer to help them find that way, but not by giving them your solution. Instead, you encourage them to find their own. They won't like that. Yes, the luminary said. But it's the only answer that might work. The Krell need to know that wisdom can't be bought, stolen, or forced. It can only be grown, slowly and painfully, by a civilization that is willing to look at itself honestly. Anya laughed with a bitter tone. So we have to give therapy to an alien empire that is violent? Yes, in a way, Brightness Ascending said with a smile. Welcome to the network. This is what we do. We help each other become better versions of ourselves, not just share knowledge. It can be messy and frustrating, and it takes a lot longer than anyone wants, but it's the only way to get to where you want to go. The next day, Anya went back to the United Earth Council. This time the room was quieter and less lively. The first panic over the Krell's threat had turned into tired worry. Anya started by saying, I've been thinking about what Hierarchus Cathar said. About how the Krell have been trying to activate their fragment for hundreds of years. I realized that we're making the same mistake they did. Chin-Li, the ambassador, frowned. What do you mean? Anya said, we're treating the fragment's knowledge like a prize that people are fighting over. A resource to be used or controlled. But that's not what it is. The knowledge is almost secondary. The real gift is the change that comes from being worthy of receiving it. She brought up pictures of the fragment, the moment it was turned on, and the patterns that had danced across its surface. The Arcane built a test, yes. But not a test of intelligence or technological sophistication. A test of character. Of whether a species has integrated wisdom alongside advancement. Of whether they can be trusted with power. Ambassador Williams asked, and what is your point? Every time we fight about how to use the fragment's knowledge for military purposes, make money off of it, or keep it from our perceived enemies, we fail the test. We show that we're not ready and that we activated the fragment by accident, not by truly earning it. There were protests in the room, but Marcus stood up and called for order. Let her finish. Anya took a big breath. Let's stop thinking of the fragment as something we own. Instead, let's think of ourselves as stewards. We are caretakers of knowledge that belongs to the whole galaxy, not just Earth. That means sharing it, not the detailed technical specifications but the principles, the understanding, and the wisdom. Chin-Li said in disbelief, share it with the Krell? The species that just scared us? Especially with the Krell, Anya said firmly. Because they are where we were 9 months ago, powerful and advanced but missing something important. If we can help them find that, not by giving them our solution but by encouraging them to come up with their own, we might be able to turn an enemy into a partner. That's very naive, said Ambassador Okafor. Maybe, Anya said. But think about the other option. We keep the knowledge to ourselves, make weapons and get ready for war. The Krell do the same thing. Eventually there will be war and no one will win. Or we can take a different path. We can reach out and say, we understand your frustration. We felt it too. Let us help you find your own way to wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, we can start building the kind of galaxy the Arcane imagined. The room for the council became quiet. Then, out of the blue, Ambassador Williams spoke up. You know what? She's right. I hate that she's right because it would be so much easier to just make bigger guns. But she's right. We either live up to the gift we've been given or we don't deserve it. I agree, Ambassador Okafor said slowly. The African Union has been through this before. They chose cooperation over conflict even when conflict seemed easier. It's hard, but it works. One by one, the ambassadors at the table nodded. Not all of them, some still looked worried or unsure. But that's enough. Enough to make a difference. Marcus asked, what do we do now? Anya opened a holographic display that showed a message that had been suggested. We send this to the Krell as an invitation. Not to share how we activate things but to have a cultural exchange. To help them understand what humans have learned. That wisdom and intelligence are not the same thing, and that both are needed. That consciousness integration is not a technique but a way of being. What if they don't want to? Chinli asked. Then we haven't lost anything but the effort, Anya said. But if they agree, we might help another species become wise. And in doing so, show that the Arcane were right to trust us. Not everyone voted the same way. It never was with choices this big. But it was enough. The message would get through. That night, when Anya left the council chamber, she felt lighter than she had in months. They still had some problems to deal with. The road ahead was still hard and still unclear. But for the first time since the activation, people had chosen wisdom over convenience. Love instead of fear. Connection instead of fighting. It was a little step. But it was the right way. That was sometimes enough. Anya was shocked to find herself teaching an alien empire how to meditate 14 months after activation. The Krell group sat in a circle in the IASC training center, and they looked very uncomfortable. There were 12 of them, including Hierarch Escathar. They all wore adaptive environmental suits that made them look even scarier than usual. Their lizard-like looks and military posture made them look like they were more at ease with weapons than with silence. Take a breath, Anya said softly. Don't think about anything. Don't try to solve anything. Just be here now. A younger Krell named Velska moved around restlessly. This is pointless. Breathing happens on its own and doesn't need any conscious thought. That's the point, Anya said. We think, analyze and solve problems so much that we forget how to just be. How to be aware without always trying to do something with that awareness. Escathar's eyes, which were golden, opened. I don't see how this has anything to do with activating fragment. Anya smiled. I know. That's what the problem is. Cultural exchange had been a delicate dance for the past 5 months. The Krell had agreed to come to Earth, but they were clearly not sure. They sent their best scientists, engineers, and theorists. Everyone who worked on the fragment activation problem had the same basic idea. That it was a technical problem that needed a technical solution. It was harder than Anya thought to get them to stop thinking that way. Let's do something else, she said as she stood up. Forget about the fragment for a second. What is your home world like? Velska was the first to answer. Krell Prime is a fortress world. It has a thick atmosphere, high gravity, and extreme temperature changes. We evolved in one of the most hostile environments known to science. To survive, we had to be always on guard, plan perfectly, and be completely disciplined. And your culture shows that, Anya said. Military structure, making decisions in a hierarchy, and putting efficiency above all else. Of course, Escathar said. Inefficiency means death on Krell Prime. We learned early on that only the strong, the disciplined, and the logical survive. But you also have art, Anya said. I've seen Krell crystal sculptures and they're lovely. Velska looked shocked. You've seen our statues? Anya said, the Luminari showed me some. They said the Krell have a tradition of singing crystals, which is using resonance to shape materials into shapes that show emotion and meaning. That's not logic, that's art. Escathar said, that's different, in an uncomfortable way. Crystal singing is an old tradition that we don't do anymore. Why not? Anya asked. It's not efficient, Velska said. Modern technology can shape materials much more accurately. Crystal singing takes years to learn and the results are always different. It's a relic of our primitive past. Anya felt a familiar thrill. This was it, the hole in the armor. What if that's the problem? What if the fragment is waiting for you to reconnect with your primitive past? Not to give up your logic and efficiency, but to combine them with the intuitive and creative parts of Krell culture that you've been hiding? The Krell looked at each other, clearly not happy with this idea. Skthar asked, "Are you saying we need to get less advanced?" Anya said, "I'm saying you need to be more whole. Humanity activated our fragment not by being the most advanced species, but by keeping both sides of ourselves, analytical and intuitive, logical and creative. Maybe the Krell need to do the same. Maybe you need to rediscover your crystal singing." The silence that came after was deep. Skthar finally spoke, but his voice was quieter than usual. 200 years ago, our leader said the practice was a waste of time and would not help us move forward. And you've been trying to turn on your fragment for 300 years, Anya said quietly. Maybe there's a link. Something amazing happened over the next few weeks. The Krell delegation started to look into parts of their culture that they had long since forgotten. They found old crystal singing masters living in far-off parts of Krell Prime. They found poetry forms that people had thought were too silly to be true. They even tried out meditation techniques that their ancestors used before the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't simple. It didn't happen overnight that people stopped being conditioned by culture to value pure logic and efficiency. But over time the Krell started to change. Anya watched Velska try to do a very hard meditation exercise, holding two thoughts that were opposite each other without logically resolving them. The young Krell's face went from angry to confused to almost amazed. Velska said, I can feel something. Like a new sense waking up. Is this what you meant by integrating consciousness? Yes, Anya said with a smile. You're learning to let different parts of your mind work together instead of competing. Logic and intuition don't have to fight each other, they can work together. Skthar was watching from the other side of the room, and his face was hard to read. He went up to Anya alone after the session was over. I have to tell you something, he said. About why the Krell are so eager to turn on our fragment. Anya waited, knowing this was important. Skthar said with no sugarcoating, our civilization is dying. Not physically we're strong, efficient and powerful. But culturally and spiritually we're empty. For the past 500 years, we've made everything logical, efficient and productive. In the process we've lost something important. He pointed to the empty training room. Our birth rates are going down. Our people say they feel empty even though they have everything they need. Our art is generic, our music is formulaic, and our literature is recycled. We thought activating the fragment would give us new technology and power, but really we just wanted to get back what we lost when we decided that logic was the only thing that mattered. Anya's heart swelled with kindness. You're not the only one who feels that way. Humanity almost made the same mistake. We almost gave up our intuitive traditions in favor of pure science. Thank goodness we didn't. How did you stay away from it? Skthar asked. Honestly? A lot of stubborn artists, poets, and mystics who wouldn't let their traditions die. People like my grandmother, who said the old ways were good even when the modern world called them primitive. Anya smiled at the memory. I think she would have liked you. She always said that the toughest warriors had the softest hearts, if they let themselves feel them. For a long time Skthar was quiet. Then he said something that shocked her. Will you show me how to sing? Sing? Crystal singing. I've forgotten how. I was trained in it as a child before it was forbidden. But I remember feeling something. Connection. Purpose. Peace. His golden eyes met hers. I want to feel that again. 3 months later, Krell Prime sent an unexpected message to Earth. The Krell fragment had turned on. In the IASC command center, Anya and Marcus watched the recording and couldn't believe what they were seeing. The fragment sat in a huge room on Krell Prime, surrounded by hundreds of Krell who were singing. Their voices made resonant frequencies that shaped the air around them into visible patterns of light and sound. Velska and Skthar stood in the middle, their hands on the fragment's surface, leading the song. The patterns on the fragment started to move, react, and sing along with the Krell voices. Then, in a flash of light that seemed to have every color and no color at the same time, the fragment came to life. The message that came with the recording was short. We get it now. Thanks. Anya felt tears streaming down her face in the command center. The Krell had done it. They had figured out how to be whole on their own and how to combine logic and intuition. And in doing so, they had shown something very important. That wisdom was not a human trait, but something that everyone could have. That any species, no matter how rigid or logical they'd become, could find the parts of themselves that they'd lost. You did it, Marcus said, his voice full of emotion. You helped them turn on their fragment. They did it on their own, Anya said. I just reminded them of who they used to be and who they could still be. A luminary sign of happiness, Brightness Ascending stood in the doorway with her bioluminescent skin glowing brighter than usual. Congratulations, Dr. Sharma. You've done what the Arcane wanted. You've become a bridge. What do you mean? Anya said. The Arcane didn't just throw fragments around to see how different species would react, the Luminari said. They spread them out to make connections. Yes, each activated fragment becomes a node in the network. But more importantly, each activated species can help others activate theirs. The network grows not through conquest or force, but through teaching, sharing wisdom, and helping other species remember how to be whole. She went to the window and looked at the stars. The Valkyrie helped the Luminari 10,000 years ago. The Luminari helped the Tkari 5,000 years ago. Now humans have helped the Krell. And maybe someday the Krell will help another species. That's how the Arcane's gift stays alive, not through technology or institutions, but through compassion passing from one civilization to another. Anya thought about the long chain of giving that went back thousands of years to the Arcane themselves. A chain of species helping each other, consciousness caring for consciousness, and wisdom being passed down like a sacred flame that must never go out. What now? She asked. Now you go on, Brightness Ascending said simply. Thousands of fragments are still waiting to be activated. Thousands of species are trying to find wisdom. Some will ask for help like the Krell did. Others will need to be approached carefully and gently guided toward the understanding they need. Marcus said, that sounds like a lifetime commitment. The Luminari said, it is. Dr. Sharma, for your species and for you personally. You've become more than an engineer or a scientist. You've become a teacher of consciousness itself. The network needs people like you, people who understand integration not just in their heads but in their bones and hearts. Anya felt the weight of that duty settle on her shoulders. But this time it didn't feel too bad. Felt good. It was like she had finally found the reason her grandmother had always told her was there for her. She said in a low voice, I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes to help, she said. The smile on Brightness Ascending's face was bright. I know you will. That's why the fragment picked you. In the months that followed, news of humanity's victory over the Krell spread across the network. Species that humans had never heard of before began asking for help. Some were like the Krell in that they were technologically advanced but lacked culture because they had gotten rid of their natural traditions. Others had different problems like trying to fit wisdom into societies that were based on completely different ideas. Anya couldn't help each of them in person. No one could. But she could make a program, teach others, and set up a system to help species find their wholeness again. The International Arcane Studies Center grew and became more than just a place to do research. It also became a place to learn. People and aliens studied together, learning not only the technical knowledge from the fragments but also the deeper principles of how to integrate consciousness. Mystics taught scientists. Engineers learned from artists. Poets taught logicians. It was a beautiful mess that was full of chaos. One night, Anya stood in the garden that had been planted on the ISC grounds. This was a place where plants from many different worlds grew together, making combinations that shouldn't have worked but did. She was thinking about her grandmother, singing bowls, traditional healing, and the old ways that she had almost forgotten about because she thought they were too simple. A voice behind her said, she'd be proud of you. Anya turned around and saw her friend and co-worker Jennifer Okonkwo. I hope so. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing this right. There is no right way, Jennifer said as she sat down next to her. That's the whole point, isn't it? Every species and person has to find their own way. You're not giving them answers, you're just reminding them to ask different questions. Deeper questions, Anya said. Not, how do I activate the fragment, but, who do I need to be worthy of activating it? They sat quietly and comfortably, watching a light breeze move through flowers that weren't from this world. Someone was playing music in the distance. The sounds of human and luminary instruments mixed together in a way that shouldn't have worked but did. Do you know what I just thought? Jennifer asked. The Arcane didn't just leave behind fragments. They left behind hope. Hope that consciousness could evolve, that civilizations could grow, that the universe could become more than just competing species fighting over resources. They believed that wisdom was possible, that connection was achievable, that love, actual love, could be a guiding principle for galactic civilization. Anya said, that's a lovely thought. Jennifer said, it's more than just a thought. It's happening right now because of what you started. Humanity isn't just part of the network anymore. We're actively helping it grow and fulfill the Arcane's vision. That's amazing. Anya's eyes were starting to tear up again. These days she seemed to cry a lot but not because she was sad. It was because she was always amazed by how beautiful and important everything was. People who were flawed and struggling had become wise teachers. Bridges that connect different worlds. Guardians of the old flame. Do you think the Arcane knew? She asked. Do you think they knew that humanity would find one of the fragments billions of years ago? That we would activate it and help others do the same? I think they hoped, Jennifer said. They scattered thousands of fragments, knowing that most of them would stay dormant and that most species wouldn't pass the test. But they also knew that some would. And those species would carry the message forward, become lights in the darkness, and show that wisdom is possible even in a universe that often seems designed to favor power over compassion. She got up and stretched. Come on. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. The Tkari delegation is officially joining the network, and they asked you to be there. Anya followed her friend back to the main building, thinking about all the things that had happened since that night 14 months ago when she first touched the Archon fragment. A lot had changed. People had changed. She had changed. But the main point, the idea that integrating consciousness was important, that wisdom was necessary, and that connection was everything, had always been there. The fragment hadn't told her that. It had just brought back to her mind what she had always known deep down. What her grandma had taught her. What people had somehow managed to remember even as they rushed toward the stars. The ceremony was lovely. The Tkari, a type of crystal creature that talked to each other through light and resonance, showed how to activate them by dancing photons that made patterns that were very complicated. The crowd, both human and alien, clapped with real joy. This was the network working. Not a race, not a hierarchy, but a party. Each species was different and each approach was different, but they all shared the same basic understanding. Consciousness was valuable, wisdom was worth seeking, and the galaxy was better when its civilizations chose to connect instead of fight. When the ceremony was over and people started to talk to each other, Anya was approached by a young human woman who was just out of her teens and had bright eyes full of curiosity and hope. Hi, Dr. Sharma. I'm Maya Rodriguez. I'm studying consciousness integration at the university. I just wanted to say that you've inspired me. I want to do what you do, help species find their wisdom and become a bridge. Anya smiled because she saw the same determination in this young woman's face that she had at that age. Then work hard. Learn as much as you can about science and art, logic and intuition, technology and tradition. The galaxy needs more teachers, bridges, and people who are willing to give others space to find their own wisdom. I will, Maya said. Thanks for everything. Anya felt a deep sense of peace as the young woman walked away. The work would go on. There would be new teachers. The network would get bigger. The Arcani's gift would be passed down to children who are not yet born. And maybe, just maybe, the universe would slowly change into a place where wisdom was as important as power. Where consciousness was as important as computation. Where true love led civilizations to their greatest potential. It was a lovely dream. And for the first time in history it seemed like it might really happen. 20 years after the activation, Dr. Anya Sharma stood in the Arcane Memorial Garden on Luna and looked at the monument that had been built to honor the first fragment activation by humans. The sculpture was made by both human and alien artists. It was a perfect crystalline structure that somehow captured the essence of the original fragment, even though it was smaller and just as beautiful. She was 62 now, with silver streaks in her hair and a face that showed the effects of 20 years of hard work and deep happiness. There were people from 43 different species in the garden for the annual network gathering. This event has been going on for 5 years as a way to celebrate and strengthen the bonds between fragment-activated civilizations. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years, someone next to her said. Anya turned to see Marcus Chin, who was almost 80 but still sharp as a tack. He had left the IASC 5 years before, but he never missed a network gathering. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, Anya said. It feels like a lifetime ago sometimes. Probably both, Marcus said. He pointed at the crowd. Look at what you've built. 43 species that are all connected and learning from each other. The Arcane would be amazed. Anya shook her head. I didn't make this. We all did. Every species that chose wisdom over power and every person who worked to bring consciousness together built this. The network had grown bigger than anyone could have imagined in the last 20 years. After the Krell were able to turn on, many other species asked for help. Some, like the graceful Eridians, had turned on their fragments just a few months after starting consciousness integration training. Some, like the stubborn Thoraxians, needed years of hard work and cultural change. But each success had a ripple effect, encouraging more species to try, which set off a chain reaction of activations that was still speeding up. The network that had been dormant for billions of years suddenly came to life, full of energy and growth. And young people were at the center of it all, not as leaders but as bridges, teachers and helpers. Helping other people find their own way while still walking their own. Dr. Sharma? A young Krell came up to him. This Krell was one of the second generation born after the fragment was turned on. Their scales had patterns that older Krell didn't have. Scientists thought these marks were the physical expression of consciousness integration affecting Krell genetics. Could you talk to our group later? We have some questions about some historical texts. Of course, Scarvel, Anya said in a friendly way. After the ceremony? Perfect. Thank you. The young Krell bowed, which was something that would have been unthinkable for a Krell 20 years ago. They borrowed it from human culture and did it because it felt right. Then they walked away into the crowd. You know everyone, Marcus said with a smile. Anya said, I've had 20 years to meet them. But they both knew it was more than that. Anya was good at connecting with people. She could see the person behind the species and recognize the unique spark of consciousness in every living thing she met. It was the same gift that had helped her connect with the fragment, but this time it was with living things instead of old things. As the sun set over the fake horizon, the garden was bathed in golden light, and the ceremony began. Brightness Ascending, who is now very old by luminary standards but still serves as the network's unofficial historian, took the stage. 20 years ago, the luminary said, her voice easily reaching the quiet crowd, a human named Anya Sharma pressed her hands against an Arcane fragment and spoke to it with compassion, understanding and love. At that moment she didn't just activate an artifact, she reignited a dream that had been dormant for billions of years. The dream that consciousness could evolve, that civilizations could grow in wisdom as well as power, and that the galaxy could become a garden instead of a battlefield. She pointed to the people who had gathered. Look around you. There are 43 species here, each from a different world. Each one is unique and valuable. Some of you breathe oxygen, some breathe methane, and some breathe pure energy. Some of you think in linear time, some in probability clouds, and some in ways we still don't understand. You're all as different from each other as any beings in the universe could be. And yet you're all here, together, connected. Not because you're the same, but because you've all chosen the same basic idea. That wisdom is important, that consciousness is sacred, and that we're better together than apart. There was a ripple of agreement in the crowd. Each species showed their agreement in their own way through sounds, gestures, light patterns, and pheromones. But they all clearly felt the same way. Brightness Ascending went on. The Arcane gave us a gift, but they also gave us a duty. To help this network grow, to help other species find their wisdom, and to be bridges just like humanity has been bridges. Some of you have only been here for a few years, while others have been here for thousands of years. But all of you are committed to passing on what you've learned. She looked at Anya. Would you come with me, Dr. Sharma? Anya walked up to the podium, feeling like she was being watched by thousands of people. She had given a lot of speeches over the years, but this one was different. In some way more important. 20 years ago I was scared, she said. People were calling me a genius, a pioneer, and a visionary. But the truth is, I was just an engineer who listened to her grandmother and remembered that there is more than one way to know the universe. She stopped for a moment to think. Since then, I've had the incredible honor of working with many species to help them find their own paths to wisdom. I've learned something important. There isn't just one right way to achieve consciousness integration. The Luminari did it through collective meditation, the Krell through crystal singing, the Tkari through light dance, and humans through keeping our art and spirituality alive alongside our science. Every path is different and every approach is valid. But they all have one thing in common. They all require a species to look honestly at itself, to admit what it has lost, hidden, or forgotten in its rush to get ahead, and to choose to become whole again. She looked out at the delegates who had gathered. Some of you have asked me what the next step for the network should be. Should we set up formal groups? Create rules and procedures? My answer is always the same, no. The network doesn't need hierarchy, it needs connection. It doesn't need rules, it needs principles. It doesn't need leaders, it needs bridges. Anya smiled as a familiar warmth spread through her chest. The Arcane were smart because they knew that the galaxy doesn't need one big civilization. It needs thousands of different civilizations that all grow in their own ways, learn from each other, and add their own unique point of view to the big conversation of consciousness. That's what we're making here. Not an empire, a federation, or a hierarchy, but a garden. A place where every species can grow in its own way while helping and learning from the others. A place where differences are celebrated, not feared. A place where wisdom is more important than power and connection is more important than conquest. The crowd cheered, and all the sounds, lights, and gestures came together to form a single expression of shared purpose. Anya thought about her grandmother, who had died without ever knowing that her traditional healing methods would one day help turn on old alien technology. She thought about all the artists, shamans, and mystics who had kept their practices going even when they were made fun of and ignored. They kept alive ways of knowing that turned out to be very important. She thought about the Arcani who had been gone for billions of years but were still affecting the galaxy through the gifts they had left behind. They had learned something important, that true immortality doesn't come from keeping your civilization alive, but from sharing your knowledge. Giving other people the tools they need to grow, change, and become something beautiful. After the ceremony, Anya walked around the garden and talked to different delegates. The young Krell who wanted to talk about old books. An Eridian poet who was writing a long poem about how the network grew. A teenage girl from Mars who wanted help with her studies on integrating her consciousness. She paid full attention to each of them, was there for them, and shared her knowledge. She didn't have to do it, but she did because it was what she was meant to do. To link up. To teach. To cross. As Luna's fake night fell and the stars came out, Anya was alone at the edge of the garden, staring up at the sky. There were still thousands of fragments out there that needed to be activated. Thousands of species were still trying to get wise. And somehow, imperfect humanity had become one of the species that helped them find it. "Grandmother," she whispered to the stars, "I hope I've made you proud. I hope I've honored the old ways while making something new. I hope I've been a good bridge." "She'd be very proud," a voice behind her said. Anya turned to see Maya Rodriguez. She was no longer the young student who had come to her 20 years ago. She was now a seasoned teacher of consciousness integration. She had just come back from a 5-year job helping the Quellan species get ready to activate. "The Quellans are close," Maya said, her eyes shining with excitement. "Maybe another year or two. They're learning their musical traditions again, and you can see the integration starting to happen. It's beautiful." Anya smiled, feeling very happy. The work was still going on. There were new teachers coming up. The network was getting bigger. The fire was being passed. She said to Maya, "I'm proud of you. You've become a great bridge." Maya said, "I learned from the best." The Quellans asked me something interesting. They wanted to know if there would ever be a time when all the fragments were activated and every species that could had achieved consciousness integration. "What did you say to them?" I said I hope so. But even if we activated every fragment, the work wouldn't be done. Because consciousness integration isn't a destination, it's a practice. It's something that every species and every generation has to choose again. The fragments are just reminders and catalysts. The real gift is the choice to grow, to evolve, and to become wise as well as intelligent. Anya's eyes started to water. "That's right. You get it?" They stood together in comfortable silence, teacher and student, both bridges in their own way, both carrying on the flame that the Arcani had lit billions of years ago. Maya asked, "Do you ever think about what happened to them? The Arcani? Did they really go away or did they go to a place that is beyond physical existence?" "I think," Anya said slowly, "that they're still here in a way. Every time a species activates a fragment, every time wisdom is chosen over power, every time consciousness expands, that's the Arcani continuing to exist through us. They're not gone. They're just distributed. Living through every civilization that carries forward their vision." Maya said, "I like that. They're immortal in the most important way, not their bodies or even their civilization but their purpose. Their dream." As the night went on, more and more people came to the edge of the garden. They were drawn there by the beauty of the stars and the company of others who thought like them. People and aliens, young and old, scientists and artists, all standing together under the stars that made them. Someone began to sing, an old and beautiful folk song from the human race. Others joined in, adding harmonies and sounds from their own musical styles. It shouldn't have worked, with so many species, so many voices and so many different musical styles. But it did. The sounds blended into something new that honored each person's contribution while making something bigger than any one voice. Anya thought that this was what the Arcani had wanted. Not sameness but harmony. Not the same thing but a symphony. A galaxy full of different voices, each singing their own song, but all listening to each other and making music together. And in that moment, standing in a garden on Luna with people from all over the universe, Anya felt something she had been looking for her whole life: completion. Not because she had finished her work, she would never finish it, but because she finally understood where she fit into the big picture of consciousness that was happening all over the universe. She was a link. A teacher. A person who keeps the flame. That was all they needed. A lot more than enough. It was all of it. Dr. Anya Sharma died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 92, 50 years after she was activated. There were both humans and aliens in her home on Earth, where she was with family and friends. The network had never seen so many people at a funeral before. People from 127 activated species came to pay their respects. The network had grown a lot in her later years, and she had touched almost all of them in some way. They didn't really mourn her. The network had learned from many cultures that death wasn't the end, but a change, like graduating to the next thing. They didn't do that, they celebrated. They told tales. They sang in 100 different languages. They talked about a woman who had reminded the galaxy that consciousness was sacred, that wisdom was important, and that love was the strongest force in the universe. Maya Rodriguez, who is now in her 70s and is known as one of the best teachers of consciousness integration in the galaxy, gave the eulogy. Maya told the crowd, Anya Sharma didn't just turn on a fragment. She brought something out in all of us. She reminded us that we're not just bodies or minds, but consciousness itself, endless, eternal, connected to everything and everyone. She taught us that wisdom isn't about knowing more but about being more. It's about growing our ability to understand, to care, and to love. She stopped and looked at the urn that held Anya's ashes. The ashes would be spread out in the Arkani Memorial Garden, where they would become part of the soil that nourished plants from all over the galaxy. The Arkani left us fragments to activate, yes. But Anya showed us that we are fragments too, individual sparks of consciousness, each unique, each precious, but all part of a greater whole. And the work of consciousness integration isn't just about activating ancient artifacts. It's about activating ourselves, our full potential, our deepest wisdom. We don't say goodbye to Anya Sharma. We say thank you. Thank you for the bridges you built. Thank you for the flame you carried. Thank you for showing us what humanity could be, and what any species could become if they're brave enough to choose wisdom over power, connection over conquest, and love over fear. Something amazing happened when Maya was done talking. A sound came from all over the memorial service, from species that had never worked together before. It began as a low hum that was hard to hear, but it grew into a sound that seemed to vibrate through reality itself. 127 different species, each with its own special vocal or resonance abilities, made a sound that honored Anya's memory. And for a short time, even though all the sensors that recorded the event later showed strange readings, it seemed like the air itself was glowing. Colors that weren't quite real in the normal world danced around the room. Patterns that looked a lot like the ones on the Arkani fragments came and went. People said it was just a trick of the light. Some people said it was a mass hallucination caused by a lot of sadness and emotion. But people who had worked closely with the fragments knew better. The network itself was responding. The Arkani's gift, which is still working after billions of years, recognized one of its greatest champions and said goodbye in the only way that ancient alien technology could. Anya would have loved it. 200 years after it was activated, humanity's fragment was moved to a new building on Earth. It was a huge complex that served as a museum, university, temple, and research center all at the same time. Millions of people from dozens of worlds came to see the artifact that changed everything every year. The fragment was in the middle of a big hall. It was still beautiful, still resonant, and sometimes it hummed softly like it was dreaming. Holographic displays around it told the story of how it was turned on, how humans got there, and how the network grew. And in one corner, behind protective glass, was a simple wooden box with a tarnished singing bowl inside. The bowl was still able to make that clear, pure sound that had once woken up an ancient alien artifact from its billion-year sleep. People would stop and read the sign next to it. Dr. Anya Sharma's grandmother, who was a traditional healer, owned this singing bowl. She knew that wisdom comes in many forms. Dr. Sharma used it to activate the Arkani fragment on December 2, 2025, reminding the galaxy that sometimes the old ways are not primitive, but essential. That sometimes what looks like magic is just a different way of knowing. That sometimes the key to the future lies in remembering what we thought we'd outgrown. Kids would press their faces against the glass and be amazed that something so simple could have been so important. Adults would stand still and think about the old customs in their own cultures, wondering what progress might have cost them. And every now and then, a person, whether they were human or alien, young or old, a scientist or an artist, would stand in front of the singing bowl and have an epiphany. They would understand that they had only been using half of their skills to solve their problems. Would know that logic, intuition, analysis, art, reason, and revelation all had a part to play in the search for wisdom. Those people who came to the museum would leave changed with the same knowledge that Anya had gained all those years ago, that consciousness is sacred, that wholeness is important, and that we are all bridges between who we were and who we could be. The network kept getting bigger. More than 300 species had joined by the time Earth's fragment turned 200. Some of them had turned on their own fragments. Others were still working toward it, getting help and advice from species that had already made the trip. And every time people got together, whether it was for a party or a meeting, someone would tell the story of the human engineer who whispered to an old object and changed the galaxy. Not by being smart, strong, or good with technology, but by having the courage to be whole. The wisdom to remember what other people have forgotten. The desire to reach out and connect. Billions of years ago, the Ark-NE spread thousands of fragments across the galaxy. They hoped that some of them would eventually be activated and that some species would pass their test. They didn't want their dream of a wise and connected universe to die with their civilization. They would have been happy to know that their hope wasn't in vain. The fragments were coming to life. There were more species. People were getting smarter. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that Anya Sharma had always known and taught others. That consciousness is the universe waking up to itself, one being at a time, one species at a time, and one act of kindness and connection at a time. The Ark-NE had lit a fire billions of years ago, and it was still going strong. And it would always be. Because once you wake up your mind, it can never really sleep again.